Hello and welcome to the 495. I'm your host, Doug Sparks, and we're going to launch right in with our guest today because he's calling us all the way from Denmark. Special guest today is Lego designer Jamie Berard, and Jamie is going to be a judge on the greatest competition ever assembled tonight on Fox at 9 p.m. Lego Masters. Hey, Jamie, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm looking at your bio. And I see you went to Central Catholic. You actually you grew up in Methuen, right?
Yes.
And we're calling you from Methuen right now, so that's neat. You went to Central Catholic, and according to your bio, you were involved in campus ministry, cross country, indoor and outdoor track. Lazarus, you were a volunteer at Lazarus House.
Yes.
You were in Project Rebuild. You were on the student council. Did you have some kind of crazy work ethic when you were 15 years old, or what's going on?
I'm just a curious person. I like to try a lot of different things. I was really grateful because I have parents that have always encouraged me just to try things. And that served me well because they just said, try it. If you don't like it, try something else. And I just happened to find that I like a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like a good quality for someone who gets into Legos.
Yeah, definitely.
When did you start getting some interest in Legos and Lego design?
I'm a lifelong Lego fan, full disclosure. As far as I'm just one of those weird people that never stopped building with Lego. When I was a teenager, I was still building. And my friends thought it was cool. And because they thought it was cool, I just kept building. And then my parents thought it was cool. Everybody was just supporting me. I was in college. I'm still building with Lego. And then it just happened back in 2005. I started to connect with, or I was already connected with other Lego fans. And we were displaying in a fan event in Washington, D.C., and I got discovered by a Lego person that was looking to bring a fan into the company.
Wow.
And that was my job interview. I was just showing cool stuff that I like to build, and that was enough for them to say, let's try, 3 months together, and if it works out, we could go longer. And now it's 14 years longer.
So where'd you go to college?
I went to Merrimack College.
Okay.
So local the whole way through.
Yeah. Oh, great. And so what did you major in?
I actually have an English degree.
Oh, okay.
I went to school originally for civil engineering.
Well, because we wouldn't, right, exactly. We would expect engineering, right?
Yeah, so I have some civil engineering, about 2.5 years worth. And I ended up going there because I thought, well, I don't know how to get a job at Lego, but maybe there's something else that could be cool. So through my guidance counselor at Central Catholic, we thought, what else is
So you were really asking that question when you were young. How do I get a job at Lego?
I did, and my guidance counselor was probably smart at the time to say, all right, let's assume there's 100 people in the world that design products for Lego, and he was just guessing. And he says, so you're telling me you're putting your whole career in the hands of the potential opportunity that you'll get one of these jobs. So what are the chances one of these people retires or actually gives up that job? Your whole career in the future is based off of getting one of a potentially handful of jobs.
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, what's your backup plan? And I said, well, I like roller coasters. Maybe I could do roller coaster design. That's when he just kind of hits his head. Like, how many people do you think design roller coasters for a living? So I have to admit, I wasn't particularly practical in my my view of careers, but it actually was kind of funny because I went to school for engineering thinking roller coaster design was my backup. And after a couple of years looking around the room, I'm like, I'm really not like the rest of the people in this room. I mean, they were very talented, but they would get so excited about, stress versus strain and, beams bending and all of these equations and stuff. And I enjoyed more the final product rather than the actual mathematics and mechanics of making it. And so then my backup, go ahead.
So does that give you an advantage? Because, Legos are for children. Right?
Yeah, it's really strange because I got a lot of good learnings there. I learned about process. I learned about the scientific method, how to actually approach a challenge and break it down into chunks. And that's totally served me well. That's exactly what I do here at work. Engineering, architecture, design, there's a lot of similarities. And we actually find many of the people that work here have a real range of backgrounds. But it's all about having a good process and being able to articulate the right questions and then also know how to break down big challenges into little chunks.
Right. And by the way, when I say they're for children, I know I have some friends right now who are very angry that I would say such a thing. But there's something in the mind of a child that it's supposed to tap into, right?
Exactly. And the cool thing is that, so just to finish off the education side, my English degree has helped me to now take the engineering side of things so I can understand how to, deal with problems and challenges, and then articulate them and present them in a way that other people buy into it and allow us to now go forward with projects or products that they don't have anything in front of them. I have to describe them in order to get a go to build them.
Right.
So I'm actually using quite a few skills there. But to your point about the kids' world, the fun thing is that 98% of the products from Lego are usually geared towards children. But the group that I get to work with now is actually making products for adults. And I'm in charge of Lego architecture and creator expert. And we literally make these big, inspiring products that you'll see at the front of the Lego store in order to draw adults in and say, oh, actually, there's something there for me. And we somehow convince them to let go of a few $100s to get lost in a Lego experience.
Yeah,
and so
I mean,
far,
that's a trend, right?
Well.
I've read that that's a trend. More and more adults are getting into this, maybe because it has this mindfulness meditation component where people find it very soothing to build.
Mm-hmm. Oh, most definitely. I think that there's in an adult world, there is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of chaos. That sometimes it's nice to know some things just work, that you can actually put these bricks together, and it's very satisfying that you know they fit. And having building instructions can be so soothing for someone to just know there's so many pages I can do tonight. I have a half an hour of time in this crazy world, and I'm just going to own it. I'm going to just make it my own and build something. And then you can just stop, put it aside, and return to it and know everything's okay. This has all been thought through. It's fine. And then once you get more comfortable, of course, you can build your own things. But for some people, it is just having that little bit of an escape and, just knowing that everything connects together.
Okay, so speaking of escapes, when did you move to Denmark? I looked up Billund online, and at least parts of it almost look like a fairy tale. Is that am I just looking at the pictures where it looks like that?
I don't want to oversell it, but if you're a Lego fan, it's a really nice place to be. I moved here 14 years ago, so since then I've become a permanent resident. I have the basic language skills. I don't want to oversell that too much.
Yeah, I hear mixed things about the Danish cuisine. Are you okay with it?
I think it's evolved.
Okay.
When I first got here, everybody was almost embarrassed. Like, oh, I'm so sorry that you had to come here and eat our food. But then they started, I think having a few opportunities in Copenhagen. There's a restaurant called Noma that introduced Nordic cuisine, they call it, to the world, and it became one of the world's best restaurants. I think it was even voted the world's best restaurant. And all of a sudden, Denmark was on the map, and all these other places started popping up, and you have all these fusion restaurants and different things. So they've definitely gone away from the raw fish or pickled fish, and they have leverpostej, which is like liver pate, and there's a few choice things. If you like fatty pork products where they really crisp up the fat on the edge, that's traditionally what the Danes are known for. And for someone like me that's a part-time vegetarian, where, I don't need a lot of meat, and then over here there's a lot of pork products, it did take a little while for me to adjust, but luckily the baked goods make up for everything. The bread here, the cakes are amazing.
Jamie, give us an idea of how your life changed after your TV show was promoted, I lost count, 3-4 times on the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Oh, that old Super Bowl thing? Honestly, my life hasn't changed much at all, and I don't expect it to. I was asked this just the other day, like, oh, how's everything changing? And I'm like, honestly, the job I do day to day is pretty mind-blowing. Like, when I think about making Lego products for the world, your head would explode if you actually thought about the impact of that. So in many ways, every day I'm kind of doing things that if you thought about would be crazy to think about. And so it sounds a bit strange, but this is just another awesome, cool thing that I get to do. But then I come back to the bubble of Billund, where everybody has awesome jobs. Everybody works for Lego. Everybody's just kind of like, yeah, cool. They pat you on the back and say, let's see what you can do next.
So what about when you're out
humbling experience.
What about when you're out in L.A. Taping this? And you did this globally. You did this in some other kind of markets. You did a reality show like this in different countries, right?
I did behind-the-scenes work on that. So This is the first time I'm in front of the camera. But Lego Masters originated in the UK.
Okay.
And I helped out with the first season. I actually flew over and worked behind the scenes, making sure things are working in the background. I've helped out with what we call a brick list, which is deciding which bricks are on the show, some of the challenges, trying to help with that. But that's all behind the scenes. And then we also had a show in Germany and then one in Australia.
How was it being?
This was the first time that I actually got to go in front of the camera.
Okay, and how was that?
Oh, it wasn't bad at all. I actually really enjoyed it. I've got some experience doing these promotional web tip videos and videos on YouTube to help promote the products. So I've never really been afraid of the camera. I come from a large family, so if you're afraid of people, don't join our family. There's a lot of people all the time. So being in a studio surrounded by, 100 people and 14 cameras and celebrity, guests and Will Arnett, it sounds a bit strange, but it really didn't feel that uncomfortable or odd. I think the hardest thing for me was just being able to be present all the time and know that everything I'm saying is being recorded.
Right.
They could use everything. And you always had to be mindful of when you're giving feedback to people on the show, this is also a pretty big deal for them. It's a contest. They're potentially winning $100,000. You have to make sure when you're giving them feedback, it's impactful. It has meaning. That way they know when they're doing well and they also know when they're not doing well. So for me, the trickiest part was making sure that I wasn't being too casual, that everything I said had meaning, potentially. And in the end, I don't know how it gets edited. I don't know, do they want, good guy Jamie or do they want tough judge Jamie? And I have to just trust that they get it right and give a balance so that way people at home understand what's happening in a really crazy environment. I mean, 20 people, 10 teams, 3 million Lego bricks, Will throwing jokes left and right, models collapsing everywhere. There's just a lot going on, and then the people at home just want to make sure that they enjoy the ride and understand what's going on.
So you haven't seen the show yet?
I've seen one episode.
Okay.
It was
did you have a sense of how you were portrayed?
I have to admit, I don't know what I was expecting.
Okay.
Again, we filmed for 2.5 months. There's a lot of footage, and that's also trying to think back to, I don't know when we shot that. But there's so much content. They have to introduce you to all those people, the idea of the show, me, Amy. Now that I see it and see that it's essentially 45 minutes worth of program, I'm impressed with what they accomplished. But it is a little uncomfortable to see myself on TV and also know that I said some other things that could have been in there, but then in the end, this is what drives the show forward.
Sure. There's something special about the trophies on this show, right?
There's one big trophy, yeah. That was actually made by a certified professional in California.
Made of Legos.
It's made of Lego, yeah. It's a very big trophy. I don't want to spoil it because you only really see details of it, I think, at the end of the show. Maybe they'll show it sooner. I'm not sure how they'll edit it. But It is a trophy that makes a statement. I will say that.
Okay. Great. Did you get to party with Will Arnett when you were out in Los Angeles?
Honestly, I think every day was almost a party with him.
So he's funny in person. It's not like the camera comes on, he's on.
No. I think he's just one of those people that just likes being around people and has a presence. I mean, with a voice like that, you're not going to shy away in a crowd. And I'm a big fan of some of his other programming, Arrested Development, BoJack Horseman, and it was just crazy. Also, Lego Batman, to be on the set and be like, oh my God, that's BoJack Horseman. Oh no, that's Batman. Like, he's not really changing the voice that much, but his humor is always present. And there's so many things you will not see on the show that we have to do an outtakes DVD because he was just having so much fun. He was saying, he's like, I know this isn't going to make it to the show, and then he just lets everybody, open up and laugh. He's a really good guy. Can
you tell us some of the other celebrities that were involved with the show, or do we have to wait for that?
No, I think they've already been announced. Okay. We have the producers and the directors of the Lego movie, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. We have Terry Crews. He's on there. Mayim Bialik from Big Bang Theory. She pays a visit. We have Nailed It. What's her name? This is always putting me on the spot, but we have several celebrities that have stopped by. And it's always nice on a first season of any show to get anybody to stop by. But I think it was really cool. People are surprisingly into Lego that you have no idea about, because we were just striking up so many conversations with people like Terry Crews, where he's like, oh, I am such a big Star Wars fan. And he just starts geeking out, talking about all the things that he loves. And he's, a big football player that's got a, big TV show and everything. And yet he just turns into a little kid and gets so excited talking about Lego.
Do you ever...
It was, by the way, Nicole Byers on Nailed It.
Okay.
The other one.
Did you ever visit Methuen? Do you ever come back to the area?
I come back all the time.
Okay.
At least twice a year. I'll be back in the summer, and then I always come back for Christmas.
So we might see you around Market Basket.
Yeah, definitely.
Buying rye
Market
bread
Basket,
and fermented fish.
I cannot wait till they go international, because people, they pick on me, because when I come home, first things I want to do is I want to go to Market Basket, I want to go to Target, and I just binge shop. I just love going there and just buying ridiculous amounts of boxes of cereal or silly stuff that will only last me 2 weeks when I come back, but makes me happy.
Very cool. So, and I know you have limited time, so I wanted to ask you one more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's great.
So you talked about your guidance counselor and the sort of path you put him on by saying you wanted to work for Lego. Do you have any advice for young people? If someone came up to you and said, how do I get involved in this world? It sounds fantastic. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the guidance that my parents gave me was probably the best. That just try everything. Just try to find where your heart takes you. Try to find what you're good at. And don't feel like you have to settle. I mean, there's always a way to make a living. You can always get money somehow. But it's really hard to find something that you just get excited about every time you wake up and do. And it may not be that you get the dream job, that you can actually do stuff in the evening that is super satisfying. But I'd also say don't ever lose sight of that little dream. Like, for someone like me to just have that so early on to say, yeah, I want to work at Lego, and then just finding opportunities, trying to make connections, going to the right places, and then being ready for when that happens. I think that's also important, to make sure you can't just dream for something. You have to prepare for it. You have to, be ready when the moment strikes. It may not come when you expect it. And the fact that I was at that fan event and then I had a website that I could direct the Lego person to made all the difference in the world, because he said, wow, you've actually got a lot of different things that you've worked on. And after the conversation with me and then that, it was enough to open a door for me. So definitely network, talk to people. If you're passionate about something, tell people, share it, because my best ambassadors are my friends and family around me. And I was always the Lego guy, and then what do you know, Lego found me. It's kind of fun like that.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
world is crazy like that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling all the way from Europe. We'll be watching tonight, 9 p.m. on Fox for Lego Masters. So thanks for coming on the 495. I really appreciate it, Jamie.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And also, you guys, remember, if the episode 1 I come across too tough, maybe episode 2 you'll love me again, and then episode 3 we'll see how the roller coaster
We
goes.
will watch all the way to the end. We will watch
That's
all
what
the
I
way
like
to
to
the
hear.
end. We will support our local people for sure.
I appreciate it. Good talking to you guys. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right, that was fun.
That was great.
Yeah.
Very cool. That was fantastic.
I don't know. I was excited. I saw the promo in the Super Bowl, and I told everybody, hey, I'll be talking to that guy on Wednesday.
I definitely have friends who got very, very excited that this show was happening. I'm sure the creative director of the magazine right now is thrilled, because I guess he's a hardcore Lego guy.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to imagine.
No, I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just avoiding walking on them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you hurt yourself. I didn't have too many Legos when I was a kid, but I have a feeling that it would have been something that I would have really kind of loved and gotten into, because they're just super cool. And I think my daughters, they're a little bit too young for Legos right now, but they both seem to have something of an engineering mind.
Yeah.
They love building things and testing things, and they're always kind of putting blocks together. So I have a feeling we're going to be a Lego household.
I think so too.
So anyway,
especially after this show.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's sold, and I really am looking forward to the show tonight. So a few house cleaning things, and then we're going to do an extended Ask the Editor section today.
I didn't get your sheet. We got to get the sheet.
Oh, I have an extra one for you right here.
All right, I will come in and get it.
Over?
Hang on. Yep.
All right. So we have a few house cleaning things. Like, one thing I wanted to make sure everybody knows is we're not just on Facebook Live. We're also on YouTube. We're on something that I keep calling iTunes, which no longer exists.
Yeah, everyone does. Don't worry about it.
So it's Apple Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. So there's a number of different ways you can subscribe to the 495, other than just watching this live during the day.
Go back and get some past episodes and listen to them in the car while you're driving down the double-decker here in Lawrence. Or
And don't be afraid to hit the like button. Don't be afraid to hit the little heart button. I can kind of see it blow up on the screen. It makes me very happy if you show me love during the live part. And then the other thing is, during these Ask the Editor segments, or longer segment where we're handling questions, you can type questions on the screen, and I'll try to answer them in real time.
Yep.
And that way you can tell that I'm not just getting all the answers for this stuff off Wikipedia. You can put me on the spot, throw me some curveballs.
You don't strike me as a Wikipedia person.
See what I got. Well, you do have to check things sometimes.
Once in a while, right?
Yeah. So anyways, show us some love on the various platforms and subscribe, and we would very much appreciate that. So we have a long list of Ask the Editor questions, and we're going to sort of cover most of the backlog. So if you have more, you can type them on the screen, or you can write to editor@mvmag.net and send me your questions. They can come from all sorts of different realms. You'll notice in this, I've written a lot about food, so there's some kind of food questions, there's some editing questions, there's some music and culture questions, there's some coffee questions, tea questions, and we're going to cover a lot of territory.
All right. Let's start with Lillian. Lillian asks, has your taste in authors or content that you read changed since you become an editor, or are you constantly critiquing?
Yeah. So I could really go off on this one, so I'm going to try to be as concise as possible.
I'm guessing your tastes evolve
it's
pretty constantly anyway.
It's not, your tastes evolve anyways, and then also as I sort of came in to be a full-time editor, I was also looking down the road at a family. And I think the major changes in what I'm reading have more to do with my children and just not really having a lot of time. Certainly there are things that I read specifically because of the job. Like, I like food writing. I've always liked food writing. But now I'm reading food writing specifically looking for ideas about how to handle assignments. I just read a book on the introduction of Chinese food to the West. It was a scholarly work, but I found it just completely fascinating, and I love that, getting down into the history of it. And that's the sort of thing I would have read 10 years ago, but now I also read it with an eye of like, hey, is there anything I can do with this? Is there any way we can do something like this in the Merrimack Valley? And then I'm also reading probably a little bit more like the Dreyer's English book, books about the English language and books about the editing process.
Yeah.
The thing about constantly critiquing is interesting. I would say, if anything, I'm sort of amazed at how unfair people can be in their criticisms of books. I'm on Goodreads. You can follow me on Goodreads if you want. And I'll read a book and I'll think it's fantastic. And I'll just read these negative, scathing reviews. And a lot of times people are just reading against the grain. The book could be kind of poetic and atmospheric, and someone's saying, not enough plot. Well, there's not supposed to be any plot. It's more like a kind of poetic, atmospheric book. So I understand the process. I know how difficult it is. I certainly read things, especially, I like to read about tea history sometimes, and a lot of those books are self-published. Mm-hmm. And I can tell what's been copy edited, right? Sure. Writing is a team effort.
Yes.
Right? So you have the writer turn something in, and then sometimes because they don't have the budget or they don't have the ambition, whatever it might be, they don't get a copy editor. I can tell that right away, and it does present hurdles for the reader.
Right.
But I also understand
but once you understand the milieu and you understand what the book is.
Yeah, but I understand that some guy out in Texas who's just wants to write a book of history, wants to do something interesting with his life or her life, doesn't have the money for a copy editor, just goes for it, and I appreciate that. So I feel like I'm probably less critical than I was in that way because I understand what goes in to the writing process.
Yeah, that's got to be difficult for you, though, an unedited book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it would be if I wrote it, I know that.
Yeah, every once in a while I will stumble across something where it's just too much. And then, I mean, this is the other thing, because I don't have a lot of time. If I really don't care for something, I'm just not going to read it. I have the benefit of only reading stuff that I'm pretty sure I'm going to really like or love.
Yep.
I write reviews for the magazine, too. And once again, not every critic has this. I can look into something, and if I don't care for it, I can assign it to someone else, or we don't have to cover it. I only really want to write about stuff that I like and that I'm passionate about, or that I think is worth sharing. And that's fantastic. It means I never have to really read those books.
So you won't write a bad review?
At this point in time, I will not write a bad review because
just pass it off. Yeah.
There's only this much space in the magazine for the review. Why am I going to focus on something that I don't think people ought to read?
Oh, true. Yeah.
You know? And I've had situations where I pick something up, it just grabs me right away, and it's like, I am going to write a review of this. I don't care if I have to stay up till midnight writing it.
Yep.
I just really like this, and I want people to know about it.
All right, Mark asks, and I didn't know this genre existed or this type of person existed. Mark asks, who is your favorite fiction writer turned philosopher and favorite philosopher turned fiction writer?
Okay,
Do philosophers exist anymore, by the way?
Okay, well, you get right to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And Mark, by the way, I'm going to out him a little bit, is one of the Horn brothers. He's a farmer up in New Hampshire, and they write a column for the magazine where they share recipes from using locally made ingredients. A really fantastic column. And like me, he has a little bit of background in philosophy, so we sometimes talk about, speaking of Denmark, Kierkegaard and things like this in our spare time, nerding out over these kind of things. The question you raise is important because really philosophy, the meaning of philosophy has changed over time. So you get back before like the 18th century, and philosophy is just kind of like knowledge. Like if you're studying medicine, that was philosophy. If you're studying anatomy, that was philosophy. Everything is under the umbrella of philosophy.
Okay. Yep.
And then a certain time it kind of breaks down. And then you have stuff in the 19th century, which isn't anything like what a professional philosopher would do right now, like Thoreau, right? Henry David Thoreau or Emerson. And it's philosophical, but it's not really philosophy, not really literature, it's not really fiction. So you kind of have these border figures. And then you get into the 20th century, and then you start having academic philosophy, which is its own thing. Most of the major philosophers you may have heard of, at least in the Anglo-American tradition, come from a background in mathematics and science, not from the arts. So you really don't see too many. You find lots of works that are philosophical. You don't find a lot of philosophers. And then the other thing would be something like, well, are there books about philosophy? Like, say you're interested in the Stoics. Is there a novel about the Stoics? Not to my knowledge. It doesn't really work particularly well because philosophical works work really well for dealing with philosophy. Fiction works well for doing other things.
Are there any philosophical beaches left to land on?
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I had to think about there's certain, like there's an Italian writer named Italo Calvino, who's philosophical. I would never call him a philosopher, and he actually has a background in mathematics, too. I'm sure there's, and he's dealing with issues of science. Really fantastic short stories where he's, his character will be a concept in astronomy, an idea of time going through the universe, all sorts of kind of crazy, out there stuff. I'm sure there's political philosophers whose ideas would work. Like if you think of probably Star Trek, I'm sure Star Trek, the TV show, the writers were looking to political philosophy for their ideas.
Well, okay. I'm forced to ask at this point. We got to define our terms.
Yeah.
Define a philosopher for me.
Well, I would
define philosophy for me.
Okay, so philosophy in general is just love of wisdom. It's a process. That's what it means. Philosophia.
Yeah.
What I would say a philosopher now is someone who makes a living teaching philosophy and writing about philosophy.
Yeah.
Not good, not bad. Just that's what it is. It didn't really mean that over 100 years ago, but that's what we have now.
My impression is to define it as searchings in morality, searching in thought process, searching in self-discovery.
Yeah, there's a searching aspect, but and when you get into the academic side of things, there's sort of looking at the history of philosophy. Logic, symbolic logic is under the umbrella of philosophy, and its role it was kind of changed, and in some ways there are some question marks. So philosophy, a lot of Anglo-American philosophy in the 20th century, sort of seen as the handmaiden to science. In other words, science can do all these things, but they can't do these other things over here. How do you deal with them?
Right.
Well, now the philosophers can come in and try to handle these questions that you can't just handle empirically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So even if you think of like a public intellectual like Steven Pinker, who's a linguist at MIT or Harvard, I don't know. So his stuff kind of, he's sort of a classic example of stuff that has a scientific component and then a philosophical component to it. The only writer I think right now who would really be intriguing to me in this way is maybe a kind of cult writer named Thomas Ligotti, who's a horror fiction writer in the H.P. Lovecraft tradition, but he's also written about philosophy. He has a very pessimistic, dark view of the world, and his works do bring up intriguing, unsettling philosophical questions in the mold of Emile Cioran or Nietzsche, or the kind of more darker nihilistic philosophers. So if I was in the mood to read something philosophical, it would be something like Ligotti right now.
Dan seems to know you. There's another one for the grumpy old editor. Would you please comment on the use of the verb surface with a direct object? I keep hearing businesses say things like, we surfaced a problem at our meeting. Oh, no, people don't say that, do they? I always want to reply, no, you didn't.
Well, I wrote to him about this, and your reaction is a little bit my reaction, because I don't hear this.
Yeah,
so he is an editor, but
used as a verb.
But he's working with business people who tend to have these kind of jargony things. I don't deal with this problem, fortunately, and he's also his editing role is different from mine, because he'll get something from a professional, and then he's trying to. I have this power, right? Where if I don't like a line, I just delete the line. If I don't, if someone were used surface in this way in something they sent us and it wasn't a quote, I would just delete it and move on. This is non-standard English, no doubt.
Right.
It doesn't bother me, but I also don't hear it, and I have the power just to. Now, he doesn't, because he has to now go back to them and try to explain to them in 100 words or less why this is jargon and it's not going to be an effective use of the language.
Well, often it's a search for a euphemism. They want to tell you something without telling you something, or they have to say something to you, but they don't want to tell you anything while they're saying it.
Right. Classic conundrum for for people involved in the world of business.
Jay asks, do you prefer a Velvet Underground or Lou Reed as a solo artist?
Definitely a big Velvet Underground fan.
Yeah.
I like the Lou Reed solo stuff, and I like even like Songs for Drella, the record he did with John Cale about Andy Warhol. That's a really great record. But there's a mix of sweetness and darkness and strangeness and also just kind of classic early rock and doo-wop in the Velvet Underground that I find completely irresistible.
I was thinking of you last night because I stumbled across a documentary on Netflix, and I did it because Tom Petty was on the icon on a Netflix listing.
Yeah.
And it's a documentary called Echoes in the Canyon.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
It's about Laurel Canyon. I haven't seen
Laurel
it.
Canyon.
Yeah. I've read some books about Laurel Canyon.
With Bob Dylan's son produced it and stars in it.
Yeah, it's a weird place.
Yep.
Right? Because this is in. I don't know how much the documentary gets into this, but Laurel Canyon is. There were creative people being drawn to that place through music, but also defense.
Yep.
Government. I mean, it's just there's who knows.
Laurel Canyon has drawn a wide range of creatives, right? Yeah,
and they were all connected in these weird ways. Yeah. So there's conspiracy theories about that.
Yeah, see, I'd like to hear some of the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
This was centered around the Byrds mostly and musical influence, and there were a lot of great great interviews in there and stuff. It's a nice piece.
I have to check it out.
Yep. Ed asks, how does a pizza stone work? I've never used one, but have friends who love them.
Yeah. So now we're moving into food stuff.
Yeah. I think I know this.
I'm not going to answer pizza stone works. First of all, if you buy this is my advice. Don't use a pizza stone.
Okay.
Here's my pizza advice. A professionally made pizza is kind of a perfect thing. And to make it right, you need dough that's hard to make, and you need an oven that's 700, 800 degrees.
Wow.
And your home oven isn't that.
No.
So I love doing things at home that are better than what I can get in restaurants or equivalent to. I will never make a home pizza that's as good as what you can get at your average pizza place down the street for a lot less money. That's my feeling about pizza. Do you make your own pizza? Do you
make from scratch?
Yeah.
No.
It's really tough.
Might throw a frozen pizza in there once in a while, but
sure.
Yeah,
even bakers. Well, this is what I do have a pizza stone, but I put a frozen pizza on there. I put other things on there just to kind of heat it up. So pizza is one of those food things. You got kids now,
damn it. You got to do frozen pizzas.
I know. Yeah, pizza is one of those things that is best left to the professionals.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. And do you have you're a food guy, so you go all over. I've got a point that I've got a company that's ruined me for pizza.
Okay.
It's like I won't stop at other pizzas, and it's I'm not going to sit here and say it's the greatest in the world. It's just I really like it.
Okay.
So it's like if I'm going to have a piece of pizza, which is a dietary sacrifice.
Sure.
It's like I'm going to save it and go to these guys.
Yeah.
But I like. So do you have a preferred
So wait,
place?
what is it?
It's Anchor Pizza in Newburyport.
Okay, Anchor
Yeah.
Pizza. I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Actually, I've heard they're fantastic.
It's really good. Yeah.
My favorite,
In a town, by the way, that has 3 or 4
really good.
much heralded pizza shops.
Yeah, yeah.
With long histories.
Yeah. Really fantastic places out there. Now, I tend to be wary of liking things for nostalgic reasons. But for nostalgic reasons, I do have a favorite pizza place in the Merrimack Valley, and that is the place that some people love and some people hate, which
Always.
is Tony and Ann's.
Oh, yeah.
Because I grew up in Chelmsford,
Oh, okay.
and Tony and Ann's was in Chelmsford. And as a young person, I would go there. Tony was a very gruff individual. He would kind of shout at you if you ordered a root beer, and he decided he didn't want to give you a root beer. He was going to give you a Pepsi. You're getting a Pepsi.
Dang kids.
A unique, sort of sweet-tasting pizza, but the taste of Tony and Ann's brings me back to being 16 years old.
Yeah.
Like that. And I had some really great encounters. I remember I was in a band.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
Oh,
Embrace it.
okay, all right.
I don't
I
think there's
appreciate
anything
it.
wrong with that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I was young and I was in a band, and we didn't have any money. And the bassist of the band said, and we were all into Tony and Ann's. He said, "We're going to drive up there and we're just going to ask him for a free pizza." And I was like, no, we're not. I was so embarrassed. We're not going to do that. He's like, "No, we're going to do it." So he drives the car and he goes up to Tony, and it was kind of like a quiet afternoon. He said, "We're broke. Will you give us a free pizza?" And he gave us a free pizza. Yeah. So I will always remember that as this, kind of, and once again, it brings me right back to childhood. I love Tony and Ann's. I hope my daughters develop an appreciation for Tony and Ann's. They stopped after he passed away.
Yep.
But now they're back in business and they're open and drinking.
Speaking of nostalgia, I'm 61. I have a cousin who's a few months younger than me who spent summers out here. And whenever he comes out to visit me, we have to go to the beach. And we have to get the beach pizza.
Yeah.
You a beach pizza guy? It's for the same thing because it takes you back.
Yeah.
Right? It just puts you in. It puts you at 16 years old having pizza at Salisbury
Absolutely.
Beach. Yeah.
I mean, all pizza's good.
Yeah.
All pizza's good, bordering on great.
Yep.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Right? As long as they put in some kind of effort. And then there's the stuff, I love, gourmet pizza with, goat cheese. Everything's fine with me. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
So beach pizza is absolutely fine.
So a pineapple on pizza, you're okay? Yeah, nay?
I'm fine with it because my wife is fine with it. If I was ordering, there would be no pineapple on the pizza.
No.
But I'm also not going to put people in prison over it.
I like when they step out a little bit.
Yeah,
You can survive a slice of of an unusual piece of pizza.
Yeah.
Hannah asks, sharpening nice knives. Should I try to do it myself or should I pay the kitchen store $10 to do it for me? I'd get pleasure out of the act, but I'm concerned that it will result in a terrible edge. How hard is it to do right? How badly can you mess it up?
I sharpen my own knives. I've had the same chef's knife for a long time. Pretty much every time I use it, I take out the steel. And you just need to learn how to do that. And that's recommended. I'm also a little bit amazed.
Do you have a stone or do you have a device that angles it correctly?
I have a device if it starts to really get dull, which doesn't happen a lot. And then I just have your classic steel that I use. Oh. And I just do that every time. Every single time I cook, I take it and do that. Yeah. Because at some point when I was cooking in a kitchen, somebody said you have to do it every time. And I just started doing it every time. It's never been a problem for me. You have to get the angle down. But mostly it's the sort of thing you just don't want to overthink.
Yeah.
You just do it. You learn how to get your angle of whatever it is, 15 degrees about, and you do it the same thing, and it works for me.
I should because I become attached to knives.
Yeah. Well, so this is what happens to me
and
sometimes.
Good ones are hard to find.
Yeah. So I will occasionally be visiting somebody's house, and they'll say, "Hey, we're chopping vegetables. Do you mind chopping some peppers?" And I'm a little bit amazed at how many people keep and use dull knives. That is not good. It's not safe. It's really going to slow you down. So you do have to keep your knives sharpened. And it's not expensive. So if you're a little bit behind, there's nothing wrong to going to the neighborhood guy who sharpens knives and getting them done. And it's a fantastic way of doing it. And she says $10. Sometimes it can be even less. It's not expensive.
Yep.
The process and you just take it there and they kind of do it. There's nothing wrong with doing that either.
Yeah, the dulling of the knife, that's like the frog in the pot, right? It happens so slowly you don't notice it. And all of a sudden you walk in and you say, wow, this knife's really dull, but they don't know.
Yeah, there's this great Fuchsia Dunlop book on Szechuan cuisine. And she was, I think she's an English writer, but she had also studied French cuisine, and then she lives in Sichuan province. And she talked about this really great image of going to the cooking school there, and everybody has like the cleavers, the Chinese type of knife, and just religiously like in treating this knife like it's this kind of sacred thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like every single
Yeah.
time, just gently, every single time, and packaging it up and really taking care of it.
It's a tool.
Like it has a soul. And,
Yeah.
and I do think we should respect our knives in that way.
It's like I got a knife missing right now, and it's just driving me nuts.
All right.
I use it every day. I use this knife every day. I need to have it. Richard asks, are there any teas that help the gut biome?
Okay.
What the hell is the gut biome?
So yeah,
first of all,
this sounds a little nuts.
Yeah.
It actually gets asked a lot. So
Yeah.
the gut biome is just the stuff that isn't you that lives in your belly and helps you digest.
Yep.
Some of it does good things for you, some of it does bad things for you, and everybody has a different gut biome based on their diet and their genetics.
different
et cetera,
recipe,
et cetera.
right? Yeah.
So there's some theory that fermented foods, for example, yogurt or sauerkraut, will help give you a stronger gut biome. I think in general we're not sure, but it seems likely.
Active cultures, as
Yeah,
they used to tell us.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, interesting enough, there are teas that are made in China and elsewhere that are fermented teas. And these teas traditionally have been associated in Chinese medicine with improved digestion. I don't know if the evidence there, I don't know if the evidence can ever be there because the complication of monitoring. And then, of course, you're killing off any active cultures in a tea just by brewing it. Right? Just the hot water is going to kill everything off. I brought one in because people, if they haven't seen them, have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So can you see this on?
Yes, hold it
Okay.
up a little bit more.
Okay, so
There we
this
go,
is
yep.
this is actually a tea. This is a fermented tea. This is a tea cake, and I'm going to open this up and I'm going to let people see what it is and what it looks like. And this is one of the earliest ways of
Oh,
storing tea
look at that.
because you would compress it. This is very, very heavily compressed, and you would compress it like this and load it up on horses and donkeys and send it off on the tea road in China. Oh, I can see it now. Okay, so and you see this side has a little stamp with all the information because believe it or not, there's a market of counterfeiting these cakes, and the prices for certain cakes in China have gone through the roof.
Yeah.
So they can be very expensive. Even this one, if you looked at the price, would look a little bit pricey, but you have to understand this is hundreds of teacups here. So even if this is $40 or $50 and you're like, oh, $40 or $50 for
Yeah.
tea, it's still much, 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 much less than what
Hundreds?
you would spend at Starbucks.
It doesn't look like hundreds.
This one wouldn't be hundreds, but there are
Yeah.
definitely, especially age, because they age.
Yep.
Especially age cakes easily get up into the hundreds and beyond.
Okay.
All right. So this is called pour. It sounds like I'm saying P-O-O-R.
No, I meant hundreds of cups in there. You said
Oh
there
yeah.
were
Oh
hundreds.
yeah. Oh, easily. Yeah. What you do? I even brought in my little knife. Speaking of knives, this is a tea knife.
Is it now?
Yeah, this is a tea knife. And what you use is you wedge in a little teeny piece, and you pull out about 5 grams of tea, a little chip. The first one is, you'll get kind of a light tea, but as the leaves open up and they sort of bloom, the tea gets richer and richer, and you'll start hitting the really good cups at your third brewing, your fourth brewing.
Oh, really?
And then depending upon the tea and its durability, it's going to start to fade after that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll do it sometime in the studio. I'll bring in
So
some tea and we'll
small
brew.
pieces, and you
Small-
get several rounds with it. Huh?
At least several.
Yeah.
More than several.
Interesting.
Okay, so that's pour tea. And I don't know. I mean, I was writing a story for the magazine on sleep, and I was talking to someone from the nursing department at UML who grew up in China, and she was drinking some type of tea, and I mentioned I was into tea, and we started talking about port, and she said, "Oh yeah, it's great for your digestion. You drink it during the meal," and you hear this over and over and over again.
Yep.
So there's something about this apparently that's good for your digestion. There's a lot of evidence it's good for other things, too, like blood pressure. And once again, not a doctor. This is just what I've been
Yep.
reading, but blood pressure and blood sugar levels and all sorts of stuff like that.
On the shelves now in Market Basket that we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
On the shelves now with tea on Market Basket, I'm seeing a trend towards probiotics
Yeah.
in teas as well.
Yeah, that I once again, not an expert.
Yeah.
I would tend to think that that's more marketing than
Yeah.
anything else, just because anything really probiotic is going to be killed in the brewing process.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. So there's better ways without the additives that cost the make you want to pay $1 more for your tea bags.
And finally, Christian asks, is coffee only good for those addicted to caffeine? Is there a market for fancy decaf for people who never drink caffeine? If not, does that mean coffee doesn't really taste good?
Coffee tastes great if you drink good coffee. A lot of people grow up drinking coffee that isn't very good. If you're caffeine sensitive, I worked in the coffee industry, and we were always told they are engineering. They're breeding coffee beans that are going to have very little or no caffeine that will taste just as good, and it's going to happen any day now.
Naturally decaffeinating the bean?
Yeah. It still hasn't happened yet. And I remember hearing about this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it will at some point. I mean, I like the caffeine. It's hard for me to imagine drinking coffee without the caffeine because you're not just drinking it for the taste. It's not a question of taste. It's also how it makes the body feel. I'm not caffeine sensitive. I like caffeine. And I like that kind of heat or warmth or that energy that comes from the drink. It's not the most important part. I also like the taste.
Yeah.
If you're caffeine sensitive, one thing you might want to think about is tea, because there's a trick you can do with tea. First of all, you absorb the caffeine differently. So with coffee, the caffeine hits your bloodstream almost immediately. It's delayed when you're drinking tea because of polyphenols that are wrapped around the caffeine molecule.
Right.
Is the way it's been explained to me. So we're now talking hours to absorb the caffeine rather than minutes like with coffee. And then the trick that you can do is if you're getting good whole leaf tea like this, or actual like whole leaf tea that you buy, from the store, is as you're brewing, you put it in your brew basket, however you do it, brew it, throw the first cup out, because most of the caffeine is going to be in that first cup.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
And now, in the first cup doesn't even taste the best if you're brewing properly. That's the one where the leaves are just starting to open up.
Right.
All right? So it's going to taste better, and you're going to have very little or moderate levels of caffeine if you start drinking second, third, or fourth steepings. And you don't have to worry. The other thing that you can do is there are things like teas, like rooibos has no caffeine. Rooibos is like a root, and it can be a little bit calming. It's used in Africa. It's easy to find. You can find it on Amazon or whatever. Rooibos has no caffeine. I don't like chamomile during the day because it actually works as a sedative on me and will make me tired.
Interesting.
I don't want that. There are things like chamomile. Tulsi is made from sort of a mint-like plant that's supposed to be really, really good for you. That has no caffeine. So there are other things. Now, the difference between something like tea or coffee and something like Tulsi is now where taste matters. Because a cup of Tulsi here and here and here, made from these leaves, it all kind of tastes the same. There you're really just doing because you like a hot-tasting drink that tastes like Tulsi. Whereas this tea is going to taste completely different from a tea made in another area of China, or one that's been aged 2 years instead of 4 years.
Oh.
And a coffee from Kenya is going to taste completely different from a coffee from Colombia. And a coffee at high altitude is going to taste different from low altitude.
Like wine, it takes on the personality of the land.
There's a terroir aspect to it for sure. In Japan, which has a great sort of tea culture, they'll do different grades of tea based on how much shade they get. And the difference between a shaded tree and a shaded tea and a partially shaded tea is really, really significant.
Interesting.
They all taste good.
Yeah.
But the kind of complexity and the refinement of these shaded, very, very delicate, where they're just super, super delicate processed teas, this is a big difference.
Interesting. All right.
That's
it.
Well, that's not it. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. We do have little bits.
Do you have your little bit sheet?
Yeah, let's do little bits. I didn't give this to you either. Man,
No, you gave it to me. I didn't know if I got your copy.
Yeah, so at the end of every show, we do a little bits, which is little facts about the place that we call home, place we love, the Merrimack Valley. And I want to talk about Ralph Baer. Do you know who Ralph Baer is?
No.
Ralph Baer is, sometimes they call him the father of home video games.
Nice.
Okay. So he was a pioneer in the home video game industry. He held more than 150 patents. He was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2010. He launched a game called Odyssey in 1972 by Magnavox, and it was the first video game for the consumer market. Now, here's where it kind of gets interesting and maybe a little bit personal for me. He developed much of the design in the late 1960s while working at Sanders Associates, a defense contractor in Nashua, New Hampshire. You may not have heard of them.
I've heard of Sanders.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I heard of them because my dad
was
an engineer
Really?
at Sanders when I was growing up. So I definitely knew about Sanders, and I remember we had a Sanders mug
Yep.
that just stayed forever in the cabinet. And we kind of had this like funky 60s cartoony vibe when defense contractors, would have been okay with a hippie-ish sort of countercultural vibe.
They were the friendly
on there.
military.
Yeah. So all his stuff now, his prototype schematics and documents are at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. He died at the age of 92 in 2014 in Manchester, New Hampshire, also part of the Merrimack Valley.
So Odyssey was seated next door to your dad in Sanders Associates somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to ask him about that at some point. So next week, we have very special guests on the show because from Lowell, from Red Antler Apothecary, Rachel Chandler and Rick Steck, the owners, are going to be coming in and talking about, speaking of tea, they sell tea, these really amazing handmade soaps and handmade mosquito repellent, and all sorts of great stuff. They're extremely knowledgeable, interesting individuals, so I hope you listen in as we have the people from Red Antler in next week.
All right.
All right.
Find our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on anywhere you find your podcasts, right?
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, Lou.
All right.